All right, time now for an NFL division preview presented by Verizon. And the AFC West has been dominated by the Chiefs, and they are favorites to do it again in 2025. Patrick Mahomes faces some tough competition this year with the emergence of not one, but two other playoff teams from a year ago. Chargers are in their second season under Jim Harbaugh, and Sean Payton's found his franchise quarterback in Bo Nix. Raiders looking to improve with Super Bowl winning head coach Pete Carroll on the sidelines. Kansas City's won the division 9 straight times going back to 2016. The last team to win the AFC West is Denver, who won it all at Super Bowl 50. By the way, they had also won it like 5 straight years before Kansas City went to their reign. All right, we've got Ryan Wilson and Tyler Sullivan joining us here with a preview of the AFC West, and it has been a division dominated by the Chiefs, Tyler. When you look at some of the things happening, though, with some of the pass catchers and the weapons to start the year, what's the concern level for you?
It's not that high because, again, Rashee Rice, I actually think this suspension for him to miss the first 6 weeks of the year is the best outcome of a bad situation. You look at the schedule in terms of the games he's going to miss. Yeah, there are some heavy hitters in there. You talk about the Philadelphia Eagles, the Baltimore Ravens, the Detroit Lions. All of those games come at home, and only one of them are against an AFC opponent in the Ravens. And sure, you'd like to have that maybe head-to-head tiebreaker under your belt, and you'd like to have Rashee Rice to help you possibly win that football game. But ultimately, there's not a lot that he'll be missing. Only one divisional game. It'll be that Week 1 game in Brazil against the Chargers. He'll be there for both Broncos games. So overall, not overly concerned in terms of the wide receiver position, especially when you have Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid still running the show here. And honestly, the reason why I'm not concerned about this offense, as crazy as it sounds, doesn't have to do with Patrick Mahomes or Andy Reid. It's because I think they fixed the offensive line. And maybe the most underrated story this summer is that Josh Simmons, who had questions about his health, which is the reason why he fell at the NFL draft, seems like a bona fide set and forget left tackle. If all of a sudden Patrick Mahomes has his blind side protected, unlike what he did last year when he was sacked 36 times during the regular season, that changes the scope of this offense. It allows a guy like Xavier Worthy to win down the field, to complete passes for more explosive plays in this offense. So for me, yeah, of course, you're not going to be firing on all cylinders to start out of the gate because the wide receiver room's a little depleted. But overall, this offense is set up for success because of that offensive line.
So, RW, looks like Sully's like at a 2 or 3 out of 10. Where are you at here?
No, I'm right there with him. It might even be a little bit lower. And Sully talked about the important part. I'm less concerned about the wide receivers. And to extend that point that Sully made a moment ago, you want Rashee Rice there in December and January because that's when he can't go down. And the other point that he made is the offensive line, because last year the offensive line was a hot mess, and we saw that play itself out in real time. And I'm sure that 60-minute Super Bowl felt like it was 4 hours for Patrick Mahomes with the beating it took. It felt a lot like the 2020 Super Bowl where they had no answers against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And what did they do? They went out and fixed the offensive line. They appear to have done that again with Justin Simmons. So that's great news for Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. I think the other thing, Tommy, and as our unofficial pop culture correspondent, you probably agree with this. It feels like Travis Kelce, now that he's engaged, can focus more on football, and maybe he learned something from last year with all the media attention that his fiance drew. And I think we're going to see a different version of Travis Kelce this year. So perhaps he helps out in the short term with Rashee Rice not being there. So no concerns with this team. I've slept on them before when they had slow starts. Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes make sure that they are the team that we think they are.
Yeah, I call them those funny props, those ones offshore that you can get, like, will he propose? When will he propose? He already did, folks. You ain't got to worry about that in the 2025 season for the Kansas City Chiefs. And again, they're continuing to be a really good team. And it's a division, guys, that had multiple teams go to the postseason. Let's get to the Chargers, where a lot of people thought that they were perhaps a year ahead with Jim Harbaugh, that it would take 2 years to get to the postseason. He did it in 1. Ryan, what are the chances you think this Bolts team can overtake Kansas City, and how much does the Slater injury factor into that?
Yeah, the Slater injury is going to be big. The great news is they were able to move Joe Alt, who played left tackle at Notre Dame, played right tackle as a rookie last year. He's now at the left side, and that probably will be a seamless transition. He's a grown man amongst grown men. I'm not concerned about that. Trey Pickens will play on the right side, and he has done that in spot duty in recent years. So they should be okay. Mekhi Becton joins that offensive line as well from Philadelphia. But they have Amari Hampton, who they drafted in the first round. They have Najee Harris, who should be available soon. They're going to run the ball. We know that Harbaugh and Greg Roman love to do that. In terms of what this means against the Chiefs, I ain't sleeping on Jim Harbaugh or his khaki slacks because he always finds a way, whether it's at Michigan, whether it's at Stanford, whether it's at San Francisco, of getting the most out of his team. And as you noted, Tommy, getting it sooner rather than later. Now, look, they have some issues at wide receiver. Trey Harris, the rookie, is currently listed as a starter. They had to bring Keenan Allen back. Ladd McConkey is one of my favorite players in this league, but I don't know if he can do it by himself. That said, Justin Herbert needs to take that necessary step of being the legit week in and week out face of the franchise. And I think he is perfectly set up with this coaching staff, starting with Harbaugh, to get it done. So I feel pretty good about them making their way back to the playoffs. And look, man, I give them a chance to make a run at the Chiefs as well.
So, Tyler, same question, but to piggyback and pivot slightly with Justin Herbert, what type of season are you expecting from him?
See, this is kind of the straw that could break the back of the Los Angeles Chargers is if we get Justin Herbert playing like an elite quarterback, then all of a sudden you can look at them as to, okay, maybe they can go toe-to-toe with the Kansas City Chiefs. But you look at the season a little bit deeper for the Los Angeles Chargers last year. They struggled against the elite teams like the Kansas City Chiefs. You even go to that playoff loss where Herbert, of course, threw 4 interceptions, but you include that in there. They were 2-6 against teams that made the playoffs last season, and those 2 wins were against the Denver Broncos. So you were going up against a rookie quarterback in Bo Nix. Every other instance, you were coming up short. So I do wonder, yes, there's a ton of things that we can like about Justin Herbert. There's a ton of things that we can like about Harbaugh going into year 2 and how all of this will come together. But my question is he able to elevate? Is he able to, in those pressure moments where the lights get a little bit brighter, is he able to execute and play at that elite level? He's got the tools, there's no doubt about it, but can he use those tools to elevate the organization? Right now, I have my doubts until he shows us otherwise.
One could argue he didn't have those types of reps being down 10, 14, 17 points, and it showed up in the playoff game, which was arguably his worst all season long. Sully, you brought up Bo Nix. Let's talk about the surprise that were the Denver Broncos last year. We know the defense is elite, but what would be their Achilles heel? Would it be something on the offensive side?
It wouldn't. It'd be the guy that you just mentioned in Bo Nix. If the Denver Broncos, who I like everywhere else on the roster, I think they have arguably the best defense in the NFL. I think Cortland Sutton's a slept-on #1 wide receiver. They've revamped that backfield. But if there was a reason why this team takes a step back from going 10-plus wins last season, making the playoffs, to me it's Bo Nix. It's him taking a step backwards in his development, having a sophomore slump. Now, that might not be possible with Sean Payton as your head coach and kind of pulling the strings behind you. He will certainly put him in a greater position to succeed. Of course, he revamped the backfield, added Evan Ingram at the tight end spot. But I look at the games last season, all of these road games, the Ravens, the Chiefs, the Chargers, the Bengals, all were losses. You look at that playoff game in terms of going up against the Buffalo Bills in Buffalo, most of his production in that game came on the opening drive when he had a 40-plus some odd touchdown pass. Outside of that, he was very much not effective in that game. So similar to what we were talking about with Justin Herbert, is he able to elevate against these elite opponents? We haven't seen that yet. And again, it was only 1 season. We'll see how he develops in year 2. But if there was a reason why the Broncos don't get back to the playoffs, I think it'll be because Bo Nix regressed.
Ryan, what about you?
Yeah, I think Sully hit on it, and I give Bo Nix a ton of credit because he was taken 12th overall in that draft last year where 6 quarterbacks went in the top 12. I thought he was overdrafted, and, you know, our buddy Rick Spielman and I at the time had conversations that maybe this is just hubris from Sean Payton. Turns out Sean and George Payton both knew what they were doing, and Sully touched on it. Bo Nix is the perfect fit for what they're doing in Denver, what Sean Payton wants to do. The other thing is this. I don't think there's a team in the league, guys, who has gone from having more questions, say, 18 months ago than having the fewest questions as we sit here. They have completely remade that team, in part because the defense dominates, and we've talked about that, but of how well Bo Nix played. So in addition to Bo Nix continuing to build on what he did a year ago, I do have questions at wide receiver outside of Cortland Sutton. They don't have a lot of depth there. Marvin Mims is a good player, but he's the legit #2. They drafted Pat Bryant. I wasn't sure he should have been drafted as high as he was, but we'll find out. They have Evan Ingram. And then the running game. Are they going to have consistency with J.K. Dobbins, who's battled injuries in his career, and they drafted R.J. Harvey? But again, you can have these questions when your defense gives up 9.3 points a game because you're going to have opportunities to score those points because your defense will get the ball back for you. So I might feel better about Denver challenging the Chiefs than the Chargers as we sit here, but it's all going to come down to Bo Nix.
It's interesting, all the contenders in this division, Omarion Hampton, you brought up Harvey, and then there's Ashton Genty, all these young running backs to go up against the Chiefs here, and it's Pete Carroll and Geno Smith. That's kind of the headline because of the Super Bowl winning head coach bringing his guy from Seattle here. But given all the teams that we talked about, the other three made the postseason, Ryan, what are the realistic expectations here in Vegas, you think?
Yeah, I'm breathing a sigh here because that defense has to play out of its mind for virtually every single division game because you're going to be going up against the firepower we just discussed. I love Pete Carroll as the coach. I love Geno Smith as the quarterback. I love Chip Kelly as new offensive coordinator because he's going to lean on the run game and not force Geno to throw the ball 50 times a game. That run game was absolutely abysmal last year under the previous regime, and Ashton Jeanty obviously solved a lot of those problems. But I think we're going to see Geno cook with Brock Bowers, Dante Thornton, who they drafted in the 4th round, Jack Bash once he gets his feet under him as a 2nd-round pick. And I think the defense is going to have to hold on for dear life. Let Max Crosby do Max Crosby things, but somebody's going to have to step up and make some plays. Micah Parsons feels like a great landing spot in Oakland, Las Vegas, excuse me. I don't know if they have the money or the draft picks to do anything like that, but it's going to come down to Geno and that offense being on point week in and week out for them to be competitive.
And Sully, there's a little bit of trepidation with Jacoby Myers. He kind of wants out. Team says you ain't going anywhere. What's your thought process here with Pete Carroll and this team?
Yeah, I see this team as someone who's just taking that next step in their rebuild. I think that bringing in Pete Carroll and bringing in Geno Smith raises your floor, but I don't think we need to really look at whatever that ceiling is. I don't think it's something that goes to the limits of going to the Kansas City Chiefs and taking them out in terms of the NFC West. Maybe they get the in the hunt graphic in the middle of the year at some point, but ultimately it's just stabilizing the organization. I think that that's what Pete Carroll and Geno Smith do coming to the Las Vegas Raiders, because you look at the last few years from head coach to quarterback, it's been ugly. And when you have a young wave coming in, it is kind of funny to see Geno Smith, who's, long in the tooth. You have Pete Carroll, who's going to be 74 this year. It's hard to call them a young team, but when you have Ashton Jeanty and Brock Bowers really leading your offense, this is a team that needs someone to kind of steward you towards contention, towards the rebuild, towards getting back into the playoffs. When they ultimately get there, I don't know if it's going to be Geno Smith and Pete Carroll, but they're going to help be that ladder along the way. So I think that they're not a 4-win team like they were a year ago. Do I think they double their win total? Probably not. This is probably a 6 or 7-win team that's going to be scrappy every week.
Okay, let's end this conversation with who you guys think will win the division. Spoiler alert, you both think the Chiefs are going to do it. But on top of that, I do want to ask you guys how many teams from this division will make the playoffs this year. Ryan, I'll give you first word.
Yeah, Chiefs, I'm not betting against Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. I've learned that lesson the hard way several times here. And then I'll give you the whole thing. I'll give it Chiefs, Denver, Chargers, and then the Raiders in that order as you see the odds to win the AFC. So I'm as chalky as they come. And you know what? Let's get crazy here, Sully. I'll say 3 teams make the make the playoffs from the AFC West because I think these teams are some among the best in the AFC.
That's pretty good. I'm right there with you. I do think that the Chiefs are the class of this division. I am not taking them off the throne until someone rips them off and says, no, give me the crown. Until we see that, I am making sure Kansas City gets to the playoffs, wins that division. Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, hard to go against them. They certainly make the playoffs, go on a deep run like they always do. In terms of the rest of the division, I think it's the Denver Broncos who are number 2. I think that there's a lot of questions about Bo Nix, like we discussed, but that defense will really mask a lot of the maybe second-year slump warts that we see from him. I just think that defense is going to be so good after already being one of the best in the NFL last season. They added some more pieces, Drake Greenlaw being one of them. I just feel like that is going to end up being the best defense in the NFL, and if Sean Payton can just keep this offense somewhat average or above average slightly, that's going to make them a dangerous team. And now if Bo Nix makes a second-year leap, now we're talking. So I think that those are the 2 playoff teams. I think the Chargers are certainly going to be in the mix, and then the Raiders, they're coming up the rear.
Okay, Tyler Sullivan and Ryan Wilson predicting another, it turns out to be a decade of dominance for the Chiefs in the AFC West. Gents, certainly appreciate it. The NFL on CBS entering its 66th year of coverage of the NFL with more than 100 regular season games and more Sunday games than any other network.